So I was struggling with low mood in my final year of school. My friends and teachers expressed their concerns for me. I also was very open about this to some of my teachers, but not so much my friends. So then I went to university because that's what everyone else was doing. I remember some of my friends saying, "Are you looking forward to uni?" I was like, no. I ended up going to university for 2 weeks. It was at that point that I realised that I needed to do something about it because the path was so unclear for me. Whereas at school, it's like everyth's handed to you, everyone's on the same path. But then after you leave school, it's like you've got to make your own decisions now. And after I dropped out of university, I thought, I'm not making this up anymore. This isn't just for attention. If I really can't sit in my room without crying to myself. So I made this decision to go to the GP, which I had done previously, but because I was under 18, they were really reluctant to prescribe anything. Having said that, as soon as I went to the GP, I was 18 and 2 months. They honestly prescribed it within 5 minutes. As soon as I mentioned that I struggled to sleep, they prescribed me with Mirtazapine, which at the time I was excited to start seeing a difference and proud of myself for getting it sorted. I didn't think clearly enough into the process and possible side effects. I was just almost happy to be doing something positive about. I had flirted's not the right word, let's not romanticize this. I had one therapy session, but I was just distraught that I couldn't get any words out, and I also think I had the wrong therapist. She didn't ask me any questions about my family, it was just straight to the point. I didn't really think anything about the time, and that was the only other route out I could find, because even sport, which is my outlet for releasing those endorphins and making me happy, wasn't having the same effect on me anymore. My mood had increased after 2 weeks. I'd also gone on holiday a few days into starting taking this to my favourite place, and it was sunny, so that helped me get through winter as well. It's important that if you are taking these medications that you don't make a complete connection that it's the drugs that are helping you, because that can make it hard to come off in the future. So it's a correlation there, but it's not something you can fully rely on. I was less anxious to start with, maybe the first 6 or 7 months that I was taking it. I could get to sleep within the first 10 minutes, which before it was like I was awake until like the early hours in the morning. However, there was a lot less anxiety in my life anyway because I'd finished my A-levels. However, I didn't have a clear path of what to do. Start a new job, which helped me feel like I had a sense of purpose, and I set some new goals like doing a half Ironman. I wouldn't have been able to see the light so easily without the medication. On the other hand, I started the medication at the same time I became really ill and symptomatic with glandular fever. The combination of this led me to feeling extreme fatigue and slightly low iron levels. If you don't know, mirtazapine has a sedative effect to it as well, so these two factors coupled together resulted in me being the illest I've ever been. I slept for about a week, I only woke up to eat. That was still so painful as well. I was actually put on antibiotics at the same time as well. They made me a bit sick. So it could be argued that it wasn't a fair test in the first few weeks of starting them. But would I have been able to manage glandular fever and stay positive throughout despite that extreme fatigue if I hadn't been taking the meds? And I think that's really important for me to evaluate in this. During taking mirtazapine, I was still really active. I was so tired all the time, and there was that constant feeling of hunger because that's one of the main side effects of taking mirtazapine. It really increase your appetite. I was always thinking about food. It is also used to treat anorexia and eating disorders. That had never really been a major problem for me, especially since leaving school, because that was less of a toxic environment. I was a healthy weight. I was training for a half Ironman, so I was burning a lot of calories every day. But despite this, I still put on weight, so I must have been consuming a lot more food than usual. It did make me a lot more bloated due to that because I wasn't necessarily hungry, just had more of an appetite, so I was able to eat a normal portion of food but then continue eating, which I get bloated and suffer with IBS anyway, so I was just extremely bloated the whole time, which made me feel quite sluggish. I was unable to focus on anything. I've always struggled with reading, but when I started this, it was like I was doing a course and I physically could not sit behind my computer or read a book without drifting off to sleep or my mind wandering elsewhere, which wasn't helpful since I was doing an online personal training course. I had lack of focus and I felt honestly sedated. I needed a lot of sleep. I could easily sleep for 13 hours, and that was really frustrating for me because I felt like I was procrastinating. I always put it down to glandular fever, which it may have been in the first few months, but I realised that I was being sedated unknowingly because I didn't look into the side effects of it. Or I did, but I didn't strongly believe that that was the reason why I was so tired. And if I did wake up too early for more than a few days in a row, I would become ill. I had so many colds throughout the 7 or 8 months that I was on this medication, and that is not normal for me. And again, I put it down to the glandular fever because it can knock your red blood cell count. Then I searched it, and I only searched it after coming off the medication. Mirtazapine can reduce your white blood cell count, so of course your immune system is likely to be weakened. So that really made so much more sense to me. And I was a bit angry I'd been prescribed this. I could have trained so much more and had such better quality of life had I not been ill week after week. To add to this, as a sports person, if I'd done a 2-hour training session, I had noticed that my VO2 max or my endurance had just really decreased. I was still really struggling to get up, do those workouts to the standards that I had before, potentially because of the weight gain as well, so I was carrying extra mass around with me. This wasn't anything dramatic, it was, I don't know how much it was, but I just felt it in myself. It was noticeable, but I don't know how much it was. Caffeine just didn't hit me, gels weren't hitting me. Some of the regrets I have about not looking into side effects or making a rush decision, which wasn't necessarily my fault, potentially from the GP. I put too much trust in them, and maybe they're over-prescribing antidepressants, but that's a topic for another day. Mirtazapine could have been the reason that I lost my job as an au pair. I can't go into too much detail about this because it's very private and personal. But basically, I was too tired to stay awake and therefore putting people's safety at risk. And that led to people not being able to trust me. I do still think there's a lot going on there with power imbalance. However, looking back on it, I regret so much that if I was taking the medication that I was on now, which is sertraline, when I was being an au pair, I would probably still be there. But, you know, hindsight is a wonderful thing. So I would strongly recommend looking fully into the side effects. Obviously, different people can affect it differently, and I have read some sources of information that suggest that a higher dose of mirtazapine reduces the sedative effects while I was on the lowest dose possible. And the reasons that I came off them was because what once were the benefits started to become negatives in my life, which made me realise that it really wasn't the right medication for me. I came back from Germany and had quite a big low because I, again, couldn't see a purpose on what I was doing. And then I got a job as a chef. I dropped out of that as well. That's also very personal reasons, like something's not right and I needed a fresh start to get me through the winter and help me see a light. By this point, I was having therapy. My therapist suggested looking into some natural routes of medication instead, or getting somebody who really is an expert in the field. I looked into it and it was going to take ages to get an appointment, and I thought anything's better than mirtazapine at this point for me. I went and made an appointment with my GP. Didn't really trust what they had to say, but I thought I'm going for it anyway because anything's better at this point. Even a GP, it was a mental health advisor. I mean, I don't know what qualifications they have. Now that I'm taking sertraline, I have a lot more energy. My appetite is decreased, which is positive and negative because there's sort of more symptoms of a negative relationship with food now. So I'm still a healthy weight, but my relationship with food and exercise has potentially decreased a little bit because I have the energy to do more, and I feel like because I have the energy I should be expending it. It is taking me time to adjust to it. Switching any medication is so unnatural in the body. Stopped taking my other medication, which was for acne, because I thought the overuse of antibiotics isn't also going to be helping my gut. I also had the contraceptive implant removed. I'd gone through 3 major changes with medication as well as life changes and things not going to plan. There's been a lot of hormonal changes in my body recently, and I think we could all do with being a bit kinder to ourselves and realising medication is unnatural to the body and it does take time to adjust. I find it extremely hard to remind myself why I started taking it in the first place, that I was in a dark place before that, whether I believe that or not. I'm currently stable 90% of the time. It's important to remember that low moods is also a valid feeling to have and a valid emotion. It shouldn't be avoided. Everybody says they're on cloud 9 all the time, and that's great. It's not realistic. So take that with a pinch of salt. our bodies are adapted to have these mood swings, especially as women, throughout our cycle. I have to really remind myself that it's okay for me to be taking this medication. Some of my friends remind me this by saying, look, if you had a heart issue, you'd take blood thinners. It is valid. You should feel like you're allowed to take it, but please look into the side effects and don't put 100% trust in your GP without having your own opinion too, and don't be afraid to question the GP and get the answers you want before rushing into any decisions. I hope that helps some of you, and if you know someone that it might help, especially someone that does endurance sports or any sort of intense training, send it to them, give me a follow, subscribe, and I really hope it helps some of you out there.